What's up, guys? Today we got a co-host, Abby Store, personal trainer, Ultrarunner, awesome podcast host. We both just decided that we are both nervous for whatever reason. I don't know why we're nervous, but Abby, thanks so much sitting down with me tonight. I appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so excited to chat.
And it's kind of like tell me you're an ultra runner without telling me you're an ultra runner. We are recording on a Saturday evening.
I know. I'm going to bed in a couple hours.
I threw out a couple times and I like threw out the weekend and you're like weekends are good for me. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm generally in bed pretty early and I don't really have much of a social life. And if I was gonna have a social life, sitting down and talking ultra running would be probably what I wanted to do. So it lined up perfectly.
Yeah, exactly.
I want to start really with the post that you posted today, and
Okay.
you're a personal trainer by day,
Yeah,
right? And I just kind of want to start there because I think that's like a big foundation for a lot of the questions that I want to ask because I think the person from at least from my experience, I used to own a CrossFit gym actually, fun
oh,
fact.
cool.
So I feel like there's a lot of spectrums when it comes to like strength and building strength and like in the ultra community right now I feel like there's like the spectrum of all the way like to the CrossFit side where like you have CrossFit and people doing CrossFit and then you have the people that want to call themselves hybrid athletes and whatever that term really means.
Mm.
And then you have people that are ultra runners that are doing strength as accessory work to be an ultra runner. And I'm just curious, like, where did you start with personal training and where on that spectrum, like, do you lie as far as your own personal beliefs of maybe, I mean, obviously you're a personal trainer, but are all of your clients ultra runners? I assume no, right?
Yeah, honestly, so I actually have most of my clients in person at a family gym. It's like a private club
Okay.
in Draper. And so I have a very small percentage of my clients who run. Most of them are like looking to be healthy or improve their physique or get stronger. And then I have like just a couple who want to run and even fewer than that who like want to ultra run. So it's
And
interesting.
and do you would you train both of those people differently? I mean, what's the overall goal? Because I mean, we want to be strong as ultra runners, but also if we're not ultra runners, we want to be strong. And you talked about like the approach that you had, explosive movements you mentioned, and then going heavy low reps, and then you talked about hypertrophy and all of those things. Does that spectrum apply to your everyday career, or how much are you individualizing your fitness with each person that you work with?
Totally, yeah. So I do like assessments with people, and then honestly, their workouts really depend on what their goals are. So I do have quite a few clients who are like, I don't care if I can run. I don't really even care if I'm healthy. I just want to look good, is like what their philosophy is. And so I'm like, hey, great. Let's do a bunch of hypertrophy work. Let's like really focus on like bodybuilding style training. And that gets them where they want to be. And
Right.
but for me, like where I'm like not so interested in how my muscles look, I'm more interested in like how they perform in the mountains. I'm going to probably put more of a an emphasis on strength training, power training, that type of stuff.
And when it comes to runners, when what do you see is the biggest mistake that they're making when they try and use strength or accessory work? Because
Yeah.
I went from CrossFit. I want to be heavy. I want to lift heavy and things like that. And I got to be honest, I've had a really tough time transitioning from like I want to be strong to the other side of the spectrum where like I want to be lean. I'm also coming off of like weight loss. I was a little bit heavier. So I got kind of caught up in, oh my God, I haven't been this thin since high school. And luckily I brought on a coach who like helped direct me. But without him, I would have been like completely lost and really didn't know where to start. It's like,
Yeah.
where does an ultra runner even just begin their strength part of their journey?
So I think honestly, the biggest thing in deciding what you need to do for accessory work or strength work is deciding where your weaknesses are. So
Okay.
if you decide that, hey, I'm actually pretty weak and I have trouble going uphill or I have trouble with my quads on the downhill, maybe you should look into like, okay, what can I squat? Like, can I squat my own body weight? Can I squat more than my body weight? And if the answer is no, then strength, like true strength work where you're lifting really heavy, you're doing like 3 to 4 reps with like 3 to 5 minutes of rest between each set, that's probably where you'd want to start. Versus if you have like maybe, I don't know, some glute, like maybe your glutes are super weak, but your quads are super strong. Maybe you'll just like focus on glutes for a little bit.
I know that word glutes is so like prevalent. I hear you between glutes and hip flexors, right? I hear about them just being so weak and deficient. And I in the beginning I heard like you got to activate your glutes, or you have to learn how to activate your glutes. And I'm like, what is everybody talking about? And then you work with the PT or you work with somebody, and one day you learn how to fire your glutes, and you're like, it's like an epiphany. It's unbelievable. And the thing that helped me was I was working with a PT, and I'm like, I can't figure out this whole like activate the glutes thing. And he's like, all right, well, you used to skateboard. I'm like, yeah, I used to skateboard a little bit. And he's like, think about every running step as a skateboard push. Like when you have one leg on your skateboard. And because we tried like scooping, like coming through and your foot on we tried everything. But as soon as he was like, think about each step as being a push on a skateboard, it like clicked so much for me. And when you do figure out the glute thing, and I guess I want to say out loud, and you can confirm, when you finally figure out what the hell everyone's talking about when they say learn how to activate your glutes, it's a game changer.
Yeah, you feel the difference. Like you feel your hamstrings start to like almost spring you forward and you're running. It's crazy.
I love it. And I loved I loved CrossFit coaching and stuff like that. And I actually give you more, like when people came to me, that CrossFit was like one specific type of clientele, but I'm sure like you work with a full spectrum of people, and that makes you much better than I could ever be. So I give you credit for that.
Honestly, it's so fun though, because I do tend to like lean more towards like I enjoy like true strength training. So
Yeah.
when I get like bodybuilding clients, or when I get clients who want to work on more like CrossFit style training, it's like a huge opportunity for me to just like dive into whatever data I can find, and yeah, just like learn a ton of stuff. It's very fun.
I want to kind of also ask you this, because I've heard certain things. My wife runs ultras as well, and she comes from a collegiate lacrosse background. She's lifted her whole life. She's really, really strong. And even as she's been progressing through ultramarathon, she still loves to lift heavy. And she actually brought on somebody that was helping her, and they went through, how women can almost train on less run volume, and if they focus more on strength, because if anything, there might be some deficiencies in strength where women are usually better at tolerating pain as far as long ultras and like beating the body down per se. And she's found that lowering her run volume and keeping her strength higher, much higher than I could. If I lifted as much as she did, I would always feel like I'd always be heavy legged, and I need the run volume. Do you, even with your own training or other females that you've worked with, have you seen that where maybe there isn't as much run volume needed, or is that just something that like she just heard from one particular coach, and you kind of like think that men and women can kind of handle the same volume and the same strength?
I mean, it definitely depends on the person and kind of their
Okay.
background in sport, but I would agree that like women definitely tend to not have as much strength as men. And so just like it is important for us to prioritize that strength training, because
Mm-hmm.
as the distance increases, the performance gap between men and women decreases. And
Right.
so just we can keep up with the endurance side of things. And so just to make sure that like our strength is there too, I do think strength training is really important for girls.
Yeah, that was like good, and she's happy with that too, because not that she doesn't want to run the volume, but she loves her strength. She loves barbell work, and
Yeah.
it's been really awesome for her. You've been doing ultramarathon longer. I can even say it's way longer than me. I guess like the cliche, what got you into ultra running? I know you're based out of Utah. Are you from Utah? You've
Yeah,
been
so
Utah. Yeah.
from American Fork, I went to American Fork High, ran cross country there.
Okay.
So I do have like a running background, and I was able to run with like the best girls in the nation. My year in cross country, the girls team was just incredible. So
Awesome.
I'm very lucky in that aspect. And then I just like grew up outside. I grew up fishing and backpacking, and yeah, my dad would read us all sorts of like adventure books, like My Side of the Mountain and Summer of the Monkeys, and just that I grew up wanting outdoor adventures. And that's just what ultras are. They're just like long outdoor adventures, I feel like.
I feel like that's like par for the course if you live in Utah.
Yeah.
You're always at. I feel like you guys in Colorado like compete for like who's the more outdoorsy and who's the more adventure state,
Yeah.
and I love both Colorado and Utah. And when we first started talking, I said I come to Utah as much as I can, and coming from where I live, like I'm not in a city, but I'm right outside New York City, and there is nothing to do. I asked my wife, I'm like, anything you want me to ask Abby? He's like, ask her what she does in the winter, because we're so intrigued with what people do in the winter, because even like we like to ski and things like that, but I got to drive way up to Vermont. Like nothing is like outside my door as far as like winter. And then as we got older and realized like there's so many fun things to do outside of running in the winter time. That's not the cliche downhill skiing. And I'm so jealous of I can't even imagine what it's like to grow up having like that outdoor lifestyle that you said. It must have been so nice.
It's so fun. It's like every week we were like up the canyon as kids, and at least once a month we were camping, and it's incredibly fun.
I'm trying to like bring that to my kids. I have a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old,
Mm.
and I never really went camping as a kid. We didn't really do that, not because my parents didn't want to. There's not, once again, I'd have to drive way upstate. I have to get off of Long Island to go do that.
Mm.
But we're like seeking out like little county parks, things that are close. Cause my kids love outside. Every single summer we take them away to a different state, and we spend like, cause I'm a teacher, we spend a couple weeks outside. And last year we did the Pacific Northwest. We went up to Oregon. We did Colorado. We're doing Montana this year. We're going to Montana. We're going to take them to Big Sky and Bozeman and Yellowstone and all that. So I'm trying to like show them things, but I talked to my son like, hey, you want to do the fishing thing? And we don't even like, we live on the ocean, and like we'll go out on people's boats and go fishing, but like the freshwater fish, I saw that picture of you like in some river, like that's that's the movies to us. That's not reality.
Yeah, come to Utah and come do it here.
So cross country. So you had a running background, and then did you like progress up like half marathon, did marathons, and then somebody was like, hey, there's a 50K, you want to try that? Or are there so many that's the other thing too. We don't have ultra marathons here. So
Yeah,
like
they're all out
when I
west.
heard
It's
like
crazy.
when I heard about these, I know you guys have so many. Like, did you just go right up to 50K, or what'd you do?
Yeah, honestly, I ran like 5K in high school and then stopped running in college. I just like went hiking a lot, and then I had met someone who had ran an ultra marathon, and I was like, "Oh, well, if they can do it, I can do it." And so I just like I think the longest I'd ever ran was like 10 miles before that. And I just like really jumped into training. I had gained quite a bit of weight since high school, so I had like kind of the weight loss aspect in front of me as well. But it became just like this personal growth journey of like learning how to take care of myself, learning what was healthy, learning what felt good, and then feeling like this empowerment of like, oh, I can run longer than a marathon. This is cool. This is fun.
Yeah, and you've had was to the I stalked out your ultra sign up, I think, and it was like 2001 you ran your first 21 you ran your first 50K, right?
Yes, that was
Yeah.
the Buffalo Run here on Antelope Island in Utah.
And oh man, I just look at all these races and I'm like, wow. And I told you I'm coming out to Utah because I see these races and I'm like, we don't have that. And I just want to be a part of that so bad. I'm like, I'm giddy because I'm so jealous of and especially because you're so much younger than me. Like, I feel like I'm at the end of my life cycle. I'm on my way out, and you're just like starting to soar, and I'm like so jealous about that. And what there's always like the what got you running, but what keeps you running? Like, you did that 50K, and some people run a marathon and they're like, that's I checked that box.
Mm.
I'm good. Or even like moving up into the distances. Like, what kept you going through 50K and then trying to go up to 50 miler and then trying to achieve even higher than that?
Mm. Yeah, to me, I think ultra running is just it's like a good medium for self-improvement. And like it is a good medium where you can really see the things like you can see where your self-doubts are and it exposes it like so quickly. And for me, like working on self-doubt is it's hard to do when you're not challenging yourself. So ultras are a really good place for me to like find where that self-doubt is, and sometimes it wins and I take a DNF, and sometimes it doesn't and a race goes really well. And yeah, it's a journey that I hope to do like for the rest of my life. I think this is a fun sport.
it, that's that's such an amazing perspective. And I think about that too. And I mean, I guess I just think that because I'm running and doing ultras, it's the ripple effect is making my life better. But I guess I didn't think about it like that, where my life is getting better because I'm running ultras, but then running ultras is also helping me figure out where my life isn't great and the things. It's kind of like if you've ever read or watched Fight Club. You're like, Fight Club was the reason that we kept our nails short. Fight Club was the reason that we got our hair cut. Like, I guess ultra is like the reason that I go to bed early, or it's the why I choose sobriety and things like that. So it's just the ripple effect. That's an awesome perspective. And you mentioned DNF, and you've had a couple, right? I mean, you've
Yeah.
had a couple of DNFs, and I've had a DNF as well. My first 100K was a DNF last September, and it was there was so many mixed feelings about it, because through my DNF, maybe I tried to do too much too soon. I went from my first 50K in April all the way up to my first 100K in September after really never running at all. And I just remember like the bittersweetness of, did I let people down, or my wife just stood here in the rain for 18 hours and I didn't even finish, and all the weekends I spent away from my kids training and things. But I didn't zoom out and realize like my kids saw that journey and they saw me achieving goals. And what has any of the DNFs been like harder, or even more like which ones did you really grow from? I'm sure you grew from them all, but what were like some of the lessons that you learned? Because I think people, especially the people I talk to that are entering the sport, they're so worried about DNFs. And you can see big influencers and stuff talk about like DNFs, not that big deal. But you think of them as like not real person. As what do you say to the people that are starting in the sport that inevitably will definitely have a DNF? Like, what are some things you learned from those?
Yeah, I think for me it's just like I can pinpoint like what made me stop. And physically, like most of the time, you can finish. There are some times that like physically you cannot finish. And I think those are kind of different. Um, but DNFs are important to me because it helps me identify like what that negative self-talk is in my head. And when you can identify it and like be honest about it, that's when you can change it and start to work on it.
Yeah.
So I DNF'd Ure 50, and that DNF to me was a game changer. And like I just realized that like I needed to be smarter about my training. Like that's literally all that it was that I just didn't have great training for that race.
Okay.
My Zion DNF like just a month ago, definitely was I had like a lot of heat symptoms, I guess, and that's like ultimately why I decided to DNF. But also I do need to work on positive self-talk. I need to work
Okay.
on like I need to work on my mental game and like problem solving when I don't believe that I can do it, even though my training block was awesome. My training block was solid. And yeah, so I think DNFs, they suck. Like, I'm not going to say they don't suck because like you're in a bad headspace. At least I am for like a week or two after. Um, but I do think it's important to take a step back, look at the bigger picture of like, okay, growth is not linear. And this is just like part of my growth cycle. And someday I'll like overcome this.
Zion was the first shot at 100, right?
Yes, my first shot at 100.
And you said you had a great training block. What were some things that were great about it? Like, what does a training block kind of look like for you? Do you use a coach, or are you kind of, going by friends that have experience? Like, what did a good training block look like for you going into that?
Yeah. So I'm just coaching myself right now. Eventually, I would love to get an ultra coach. I think I need to just like, I want to get some races under my belt and then hire a coach for performance. Um, Sorry, what was your question? I don't know.
No, what I just say, what did the good training block look like?
Okay.
What does the block look like for you?
Yeah. Um, a good block looks like me being consistent, basically. So this block, I really focused a lot on like quality long runs. And then as the 100 got closer, like quality back to back long runs. Zion is a pretty runnable course. So I did lots of my training on road, probably like 60-ish% on road, just because I knew that I would theoretically be doing a lot of running. Um, so that I also feel like without road running, I don't know that I can feel as fast as other running, if that makes sense.
Sorry about that. My dehumidifier turned on. I can still hear you.
You're good.
So you mentioned that there's a lot of running in there, and there's a lot of course specific things that we train for. And I think a more runnable course is even sometimes harder than some of like, I kind of like a break in the mountains every once in a while to get a little power hike in,
Yeah.
like even I just did canyons, and canyons had so many runnable parts. And there were times where I'm like, man, I could really go for some technical uphill. Just give me 1,500 feet just so I can rebound a little bit.
Give these muscles a break. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it looked like, I mean, you put in the work. A lot of your reels were a lot of your long runs, and you were out there in the winter. And I'll say, as like somebody from the outside, and I'm sure other people speak for that, like it sucked because people are rooting for you, obviously, and it makes it a little bit harder when you have an internet presence and you're doing this as well, because you're like, I don't want to look like a donkey. And I mean, there were times in canyons where things weren't looking good for me. And I'm also a big negative self-talk person. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to say for the record, it was like, I'm a stranger from the internet, right? And we DM every once in a while. And I didn't know what to say, but I just knew that like, you didn't want to hear it, but you might have needed to hear some encouraging words. It's so hard to, reach out, because in this space, right, we all go through the same struggle. So it's even like, I don't need to know you personally to know, that you were probably feeling pretty down yourself. And that like, as somebody that just recently experienced a DNF back in September, I was like, it's going to be okay. Because I got over mine in like a couple weeks or so. And it came back to the only time my DNF really bugged me was when I wanted to go into lotteries for things, and you need qualification races and you had to finish a race. And I was like, oh man, that took me out of the lottery on so many other fun races that I wanted to do. But I hope I didn't come across weird when I was DMing you, telling you it's going to be all right.
No, 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 no. Like I got so many like kind messages about it, and I like appreciated them so much. It's like it still surprises me, even though like I've been doing this for a couple of years, like how kind the ultra community is, and everyone just wants you to win. Like, yeah, everyone wants you to win.
We
So
do.
it's fun.
And once you realize it, because it takes some time for you to realize that like everyone's got your back.
Mhm.
I mean, there'll be haters places, but like a large majority of people, and to the negative self-talk thing, that kind of helped me too, because I was so afraid of like letting people down, or people being like, ah, see, he got exposed, influencer, blah blah blah. But then when you realize that there's people actually on that have your back, I feel like that, knowing that, pushed me through canyons and helped me, because I didn't need to think, wow, I'm slowing down. I need to, speed up, because if I get another DNF, they're gonna be making fun of me or whatever.
Mm.
I more thought, and like there was a little bit of a shift in mindset for me. I thought more like all the people on the internet were really like my pacers. They were like my internet pacers. And I thought back to all like the cool conversations I had had. And, I was like, all right, this guy would want me to do this. And he would tell me this exact quote, or he would say, and it really did help. And I'm glad that you got kind, because you deserve them. We all deserve them, because it takes, there's so much needs to go right to
Mm.
have a good day out there. And especially when like we push limits, if we didn't go up in distance and we didn't try different things, that would take away from the whole adventure aspect of it.
Exactly. Yeah.
So what's the redemption tour? Because have you put things on that, like I would have things in my crosshairs immediately?
Yes. So I think I'm signed up for saddles in October. I'm actually really stoked on it. I love the desert, grew up in the desert. And so I just like really had my heart set on a desert 100. So
Had you have signed up for that before Zion or after?
after like a couple days after.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I was
All
like,
right.
okay, yeah, yeah. So I'm excited
And
for that.
and that's in the fall.
Mhm.
Does it get how hot does it get there? Because I mean, for me, I love early spring race. I love training in the winter. I love getting out. I just love bundling up. I can do that. But the thought of like I'm doing javelina in late October, and I'm like, man, it's hot and humid here. I live on the ocean, and
Mhm.
I'm not, the whole like summer miles bring fall smiles. That does not apply to me. I hate training, and even coming out to Utah, some people are like, yo, it's gonna be really warm and exposed on some of that course, and I'm like, I know, that's what I'm afraid of. And I got lucky in canyons where it like rained and drizzled and was cloudy. That was like best case scenario. Last year was like 90 degrees in canyons, and that I there's no way I would have been able to handle that.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice when you have the whole summer to like get acclimated to the heat and just like
Yeah.
really put in those heat runs. I do remember like in cross country in high school, uh, we would start by just adding in 2 runs a week in the heat, and then it was three, and then it was four, and then it was five in the heat. So it's nice that we have the summer to like implement all our heat acclimation training and stuff.
How hard is this course that I'm doing on June 8th? The
Oh,
Snow Peak, or the
it's
previous, it was Squaw Peak and now it's Snow Peak.
yeah, yeah, I didn't even recognize the name, honestly. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah,
It's an old race. It's been around for years.
yeah, I've never ran it before. I train on those trails almost every day. They're gorgeous. Like you're gonna fall in love with this course. It is so pretty. I've never ran it before, but I've heard that it's a pretty tough course, but it's everyone who does it loves it. So I'm so stoked for you.
It's I mean, the altitude is a thing for me. I mean, coming from sea level, even when I did the Grand Canyon, which you also have to put on your list,
Oh, yes.
like going up to 8,000 feet. I think what really was weird in the canyon in Grand Canyon for me was going from 7 down to 0, back up to 8, back down to the river, and like that whole fluctuation. So I'm hoping that, like, I think we go over almost 9,000 feet in this race that I'm doing, and that's going to be high for me. But we don't stay up there too long, which is nice. So I'm hoping. But yeah, people have said awesome things, and the people that I know from Utah are like, Brad, if you can come out, because I told him June is really tough for me. It's the end of my school year, state test, this, that, and the other thing. My kids there's a graduation for every grade now. I don't know if you know this. One day, if you're blessed enough and you have children, it's like, yeah, there's pre-K graduation, first grade graduate, the whole nine. And so June's really tough. And I had one weekend, and my wife is a saint, and she's like, Brad, you got to go. And and I said to them, guys, don't pull me out there if it's not worth it. And they were like, Brad, it's going to be worth it. I promise.
You actually do need to come though. You're gonna love it.
Well, I think we get a pacer, so you are more than welcome to come out. And
I would love to come pace you.
I'm
Please.
pretty, all right, we'll lock that in because I'm pretty slow, but I mean, I have goals, but that's the hard thing about ultra, right? Is every course is so different. It's hard to set like time. I have no idea what to expect. I know I could probably go run around the block and break 12 hours in a 50 miler, but with that elevation and I haven't really experienced that hot yet. I think since last summer or fall, I haven't run in anything over like 75 degrees, 75 degrees. I definitely haven't run in anything exposed. I haven't run at 9,000 feet. There's that one client. So there's so many things. I don't know. That's kind of, I'm going in so ignorant. And I love that the website is so like, it's old school. So there's no like GPX file. It's like written on an old map. I'm like, oh man. But back to you. Enough about me. So saddles, are you going to change? What changes, if any, are you going to make? Like, was Zion just one of those days, or did you identify, things that kind of went wrong in Zion that you're like, boom, I'm going to take this in? And I'll tell you, the Grand Canyon again is an amazing tune-up. I owe so much of my 100 to the Grand Canyon. Just everything from the general cliche things of nutrition and water and things like that, but the mental side and like grinding out that going up to the South Rim after a long day. And I did most of it in the dark, and dark was a major problem for me. And I got through the night at canyons because of the Grand Canyon. Mm. So think about that as a tune-up. It might be a little bit too hot going into saddles, but like what if anything are you changing from Zion into this training block?
Yeah, so I actually reached out to quite a few just ultra runners in the area that I admire and who were nice enough to give me some feedback. Ben Light and Bear Lee, like huge, they listened to me and they helped so much with some good feedback. One big thing that like really helped me, I can't even remember who told me this, but someone said, like, I was telling them about like this heat exhaustion and this migraine and how I was so dizzy I like couldn't walk, and I sat in the aid station tent, and they're like, yeah, well, that's just part of it. And I was like, okay, that's actually exactly what I needed to hear. So next time I will know that like that's just part of it. I need to just stop being a baby, basically.
Do you do things like visualization or anything like that? I know some people think that's like hippie and weird, but like, do you ever do stuff like that? Because I do it a lot.
Totally, yeah. I practiced visualization a lot, like my long runs, especially when I was just like not feeling them this winter. Yeah. I even had like a playlist that I had queued up for Zion just to play when it got really difficult. Yeah, but it didn't. It didn't get me through.
Because I mean, like more because I think like identifying self-doubt and things like that was something that was just huge for me. And like you mentioned, it's just something that happens, and you were I don't even think being a baby is being a little bit hard on yourself. I think
running baby,
Yeah, but really what it is it's a lack of experience. Yeah. Like I think because I would experience thing on my long runs where like, sometimes my knee would hurt, but not always, but sometimes, or like sometimes I would get a blister in this one spot, or sometimes I just couldn't eat. And for so long I was going into canyons thinking like, what happens when that happens? Like, oh, I hope that doesn't happen. I hope it doesn't happen. And then I think it was like listening even to Courtney DeWalter, who was like, I want to get into the pain cave immediately as fast as I can so that I could just put it on the back shelf and stop thinking about it. There was a lot of a mind shift of, I know eventually my knee is going to hurt. So let's just wait for it. And when it happens, let's just check that box and put it in the back. Or like, I hated going into the night. So I was like, I'm going to think about the night. I want to get to the night so I can have that conversation quickly with myself. And then I can put it on the back shelf. It sounds like right now, all you need to do is be like, hey, if the heat kicks up, there's a pretty good chance I might bang out a pretty bad migraine. It might make me a little dizzy, but that's just something I'm going to put on the back shelf, and I'm going to just, now we live with that and now we move on. Where if you've never experienced it, it's hard to like put it into your visualization.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And that, so I ran Arches 50 miler like 6 weeks before Zion, which was so fun. It was a great training run. And that slick rock, I've done a lot of training down on that slick rock, and I always get this like foot pain, like this arch pain, and my foot will be bruised for a couple of weeks after.
Really?
So I knew going into that it would happen. And so, yeah, when it came, I was just like, okay, this hurts, but so what? Like, I'm hurt for a couple of weeks. My foot is bruised for a few weeks, and then it's better because it's always better.
Yeah.
So I do think you're right. Like, it is just gathering experience. And once you have enough experience, then eventually like it's going to click and I'll get better.
And you mentioned Ben Light. I want to talk about him quickly, which and segue into your podcast a little bit. I listened to that podcast on my way to Canyons on the plane, and he said something that will live with me for the rest of my life. And whether it's ultra or not, like what he said, and obviously you remember it, but he was talking about how our lows are based around when our expectations fail.
Mm.
And he was saying things like we set time goals or we set performance goals. And then what happens is things start to not go right. We don't meet our expectations. And then we start to go down the path of like negative self-talk. And that perspective for me was like, wow. And it wasn't so much like expect the worst, but it just opened my eyes going into that race that I need to manage my expectations for all perspectives. And into the visualization for Canyons, it allowed me to be like, all right, I want to go 27 hours, but here's what's going to happen when I'm on pace to go 30 or 33 or even 35 and be racing the cutoff. And without hearing him say that, and it's so simple what he said, but without hearing him say that, I would have been like, all right, I'm 27. And then when the pace slowed and then you start thinking, oh man, now it's 28. And then it slows again and it's like 30 and you start going down this hole. When I passed the 27 hour and I knew I was going to make 27, I was like, okay, new expectation. Let's go for 30, new expectation. And it was just so amazing I said him being a really, really smart man as well.
Yeah.
And Mike McKnight is my coach. So he kind of trickles down through Mike. And it was just so awesome here. And I think that really does come with the experience. Unless back to your experience at Zion, like if that had been something you had been through, that could have been part of your expectation list. It could have been part of your bruised foot list. And you could have said to yourself, and that's the beauty of it, because next time you get a headache or something like that, yeah, you'll know what it feels like and you'll be able to overcome it. And then you'll figure out something else that sucks.
I know, yeah. Something else will pop up.
What is it like? What made you want to do the podcast?
It was honestly my husband. He does video for a living. He's like insanely talented at what he does. Yeah, he's the best. And he had set up a podcast for someone else, and he was like, this is so easy. We were trying to start like a YouTube. We have one like long form YouTube video. Long form is like 5 minutes. But it was a lot of editing and it was a lot of setup. And we were like, I think a podcast would be easier and probably more entertaining. So we just like took a jump. He helps so much. He does so much of the back end work. I don't know how people do this on their own. It's so much work.
Your setup is mint. He does a great job.
It
like
is beautiful.
you can tell he's a professional.
Yeah.
Like you didn't just throw something together. And I mean, presentation is it's awesome. And I actually was listening to your podcast before I knew about like you on Instagram. And
Oh, really?
yeah, so I mostly listen to podcasts and not really much music. And I used to listen to another female. I'm not going to name names. It's not worth it. But I just became like a little bit, it was just like, I needed a break from that particular person just for whatever reason. Sometimes, and that happens with males as well. But I was saying to a buddy, I'm like, I like getting a female perspective every once in a while. It helps me with my wife who's training and things like that. I can give her recommendations. Like, I just like it. And my buddy was like, yeah, there's this 8th Lane Endurance podcast. You should listen to that. And I started listening to it. And then like I would see your reels pop up and things like that, but a lot of yours don't have your voice in it. Like a lot of them are come run with me's and things like that. And I think it was maybe one of the ones you did with like the sodium or electrolyte drinks or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And I was scrolling through and I heard your voice and I'm like, wait, oh my gosh. I'm like, and I put the connection together. And I was like, that's the same exact person. So I had listened to like maybe like five-year podcast before I even like put the connection together on YouTube.
That's
so you need to talk more in your reels so people realize it's you. But yeah, and it's been a breath of fresh air. I love, and I also love the types of guests that you're getting. I mean, all the bigger podcasts that we listen to, it's the same, not the same people as a problem, but you opened my eyes to a bunch of new people. So like, where were you sourcing the guests from? Are they people like local in the Utah area, or were you just like cold calling people? How are you picking out guests?
Yeah, so our first guest was Hoptamu, and my husband had done like a shoot with him or something. He was going to the Olympic trials. So he like just hooked us up with that. And he is like, yeah, he's just the coolest guy. I think he's going to be the next thing in US running. He's the coolest ever. And then honestly, the rest of the guests were just people I had, like Jen, our second one. I had been following her for a long time because I would watch her fastestknowntime.com. Like I just thought she was the coolest person ever. So I was just like, oh, I'm so shy, but I'm going to reach out and see if she'll even come. And she did. And I totally love talking to her. So it's really just because we live in the Wasatch and we have this like outdoor space that allows for so many just like local crazy athletes to do crazy things. We're in a really good place to be able to like pull in local athletes and get their perspectives. It's so fun. It's so
fun. No one's coming to Long Island to run. Nobody. No. I'm either going to be going to people to sit down with them in person, or I'm going to be doing a lot of videos. Where's the name come from, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, we there's a track near our house that we walk every day, and we were just walking and saw the 8th lane one day, and there's like some significance to like getting the 8th lane in a track meet. Like you're not necessarily seated first in the race, but you're still racing. So like that idea is cool to me, that like, I don't know, you still have a chance even though you're not like seated first, is kind of a cool idea to me. But yeah, the name is just, we thought it was pretty almost.
I mean, it's hard to name a podcast.
Oh, so hard. So hard.
It's so hard.
I love the sentiment behind yours.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And I had to go back and forth with that. And I kind of, I like just the consistency. I didn't know how to like phrase like a consistent outlook on things, and just staying consistent and just living a healthier life and staying positive. All the cliche things that like I try. I got to like know people long enough for them to realize that like I am my gratitude level is just so high. It is so high.
I feel like I get that from you, even though we've never met in person. Like you feel like you're a very genuine online
Thank
presence.
you. I appreciate that. And it's hard because in this space, especially in the world of weirdos and creeps, it's hard to build relationships. And I've met so many people, and I feel like I have lifelong friends already through Instagram. But it is sometimes hard, especially you being a female. Like it's hard to like, as I mentioned before, like show that support without being a creeper, I guess. And I guess it's a little easier for me. Like I'm old, I have kids, I'm married. It's like, I'm not one of those weirdos, but and that's why I love podcasting, is because it gives an excuse to learn from people. I love so much learning from people and just seeing the way, and especially somebody that I lived a very like bubbled life here on Long Island in the city, and we think New York's like the greatest thing in the world, and everybody else is a bunch of weirdos. And then you realize like we're kind of the weirdos, and I'm in this like weird space now where I'm meeting people all over the country, and oh, it's just so great. And yeah, your podcast and the people that you've had on have just been, it's just been so great. Are you kind of, what's the kind of the goal for the podcast? Are you obviously you want to grow it. Do you have like, who's like your A guest? If you could just pick one, I could just say, I've made it. What's your I made it guest?
Honestly, so Courtney Dauwalter, this is like so cliche, I know, but Courtney Dauwalter had said something on a podcast with like Cam Haines or something. I don't remember which podcast, but she had said something. The podcaster had asked her like, how do you feel when the field is really stacked in a race? And immediately my head is like, oh my gosh, I'm so nervous when there's like other good people around. Like I'm nervous to be next to them. And she's like, oh, I'm so excited because that means that I'll perform better too. And that like really opened my mind as to like, okay, like I think the podcasting world too could be like, if you're able to like virtually surround yourself with people who are really good at what they do, hopefully then that can push you to be better at what you do. So just because she like kind of inspired the whole like sentiment, I would love to talk to her. But I think we're kind of a long way from that, but we will keep like plugging away, working on the.
I'm team get you, Courtney. I mean, if I ever bump into her, I'll be like, I got a podcast for you. I'll at least, that will be my thank you to you. If I can, we'll play 8 Degrees and we'll try and figure out how we can get Courtney Dauwalter on there. I mean, she comes out and runs, you know.
She does, yeah. Who is yours? Who would you have on your podcast if you could choose?
I really don't know.
It's so
I don't, because like even having you on, everybody is, because everyone has a story. Mm-hmm. And to be honest, I like having conversations with people that I can't just Google and like look up. Like I had to ask you before this how to pronounce your last name. Like, to be honest, like that's really the people that I'm connecting with the most right now. And that's really the value. And you'll see some of the guests that I have lined up, and as I release episodes, a lot of them are people that maybe everyone doesn't know about, but in my opinion, people should. And I think that's the beauty of having a small podcast, is there's no expectations for really who I need to talk with. But because I'm small, the people know that, you know, if they're cool with me, they're going to be cool with them too. And that's, I'm more excited to find people that I don't know about. Like that seems cliche, but I feel like the number one person I want to talk to, I maybe don't even like know them yet, if that makes any sense. And I race a lot local too, and I see people that just light up race. Like I live really close to this girl, Amy DeMarco, and she's a former collegiate runner. She's she's a doctor and things like that, but she's actually doing Cruel Jewel right now as we speak. And she's insane. She just set an FKT for a route out here that's unbelievably difficult, like stupid. And she went out and set the FKT on it. And like, if and when I'm going to have her on, she's very humble. She probably won't let me talk to her. And like, those are the kind of the people right now that I want to talk to. I mean, granted, there's other people in this space. I really would love to get my coach Mike on, you know, talk to Mike McKnight. And if I asked him, I would like to think he kind of would. Because I get caught up in, I hate inconveniencing people, and I want to make sure that I add value. That's like really, really important to me. And as a school teacher, I tell my kids, like, guys, I know you're high school seniors and you don't want to be here, but I'm going to try and add value every day. And I think that's my biggest fear. Like I was talking with Andy Glaze and he's like, yeah, I'm just a little busy. And here I am like, dude, if you're busy, don't worry about it. Like you're not there, whatever, and that's, but yeah, I think, I don't know. I really don't know. I love it.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's incredibly fun, and I do feel just so grateful to be like like you said before. I don't even know if we were recording, but I feel really like grateful to be in this spot. We're like really lucky to be able to do this. It's fun.
I know. And we're just a bunch of nerds just hanging out on a Saturday night, and people are going to like listen to this on their runs or on their commute. And, maybe they'll tell me somebody that I need to talk to. And there's so many, everyone has a story. Even the last guy that you had on, Scott, like that was just an awesome podcast. And not a lot of people would know like who that dude really is. And that was an awesome conversation that you had with him. And you realize that like he said a lot of profound things. And so I feel like if I chose I'll choose my one person. Taylor Spike is a very, very good mentor to me. And he's somebody that I talk to daily. He's like my sponsor for sobriety and like pushes me to do really, really awesome things. He happens to be Cam Haynes' brother, but he is a sick ultra marathoner. He's trying to, maybe I'm throwing him under the bus. He wants to go top 10 at this Snow Peak 50. And I think last year he went like 10 hours. He wants to break 10 hours, but I've wanted to sit down. He did the Grand Canyon with me. He's the one that was like, you got to come out and do this. And I want to sit down with him and like have a real conversation. And we've talked about it. I told him I have to have that conversation with him in person, mostly because I just got to give him a hug. Like he's that type of guy for me. So he's definitely somebody I want. He's my number one guest that I want on the podcast, but I know I'm going to get him on eventually.
You're like, he's coming.
Do you have a regular posting schedule? Like, can people expect like to get an episode every Monday or every Wednesday, or how are you working that right now? Because I don't even know how to do that.
It is kind of hard. Like I found that it's easiest if we like bank episodes almost. So we'll like kind of batch film, batch edit, and then have a bunch in the shoot. Like at one point, I think we had like 4 or 5 in the shoot. And then when that starts getting low, it does like, yeah, you just need to keep for me, we need to keep on top of like the shoot of podcasts that we have like edited, but we are aiming for like once a week.
Nice.
Monday, Wednesday. That's vague, but
around the beginning of the week. I mentioned that like that thing that Ben Light said just blew my mind. What has somebody said on your podcast that has blown your mind? Can you think of anything off the top of your head?
I've had so many, like every podcast I'm a big I'm into like journaling. So I'll come home and like usually journal the next day or the day after about like something that I liked that they said. Mark Dowdle said something like he was talking about when races get difficult or when runs get difficult. The thing that he like says to himself is, oh, well, like, this is what I came for. Like this difficulty is like why I'm doing this. I really liked that. Talking with Amanda Kamiko, I admire her so much. And then I've ran with her a couple of times after, and just like the person that she is inspiring to me. Just like she definitely has that unbreakable persona on Instagram, and it is very authentic in like how she lives her day-to-day life and even in her training runs and stuff. Yeah, we've had some really, really cool guests.
Yeah, you have, and I look forward to, you haven't had a bad one yet. I haven't turned one off. I haven't turned one off mid-episode yet. So, and do you find it like weird sometimes knowing that people are like listening to those, or like sometimes I'll be like, or someone will DM me like, oh, you got me through that episode, got me through my run last night, or, I listened to it on the plane and I'm like, wow, like that's kind of cool that we are becoming that experience with people. And it just brings everyone together. I just love it. I mean, I'm sounding like a hippie weirdo, but it's just, I am. I'm just so I when people give you kind words, you obviously you're like, thank you. I really appreciate you. And I wish more people knew how much we really do appreciate, when people reach out and they leave feedback. And I'm sure you feel exactly the same way.
Totally. And like as a host, like kind of the perspective that I've taken is like I adore these people that are coming. Like I look up to them so much that are coming on our podcast. So like of course people are going to love the podcast cuz these people are amazing. Like they do crazy hard things and they have like crazy cool insights on running and life, and I enjoy them so much. So to me it's like, "Oh, of course you loved it. They were so cool." And my job is just to like kind of stay out of the way.
And I do look forward to that of like having more guests. I've had a couple of people because I usually live stream my podcast on Monday nights, and I've brought people on live
Oh, cool.
and with like a live chat and things like that. And it's it is nice when the attention isn't on you per se. And there's some times where I want to get a message across, and I like being able to do that. But I am so looking forward to this shift in the podcast of like having guests and really trying to grow the community. This year I'm really like dedicated to helping other people. Now that I've achieved my goal, I've checked my box for the year, and obviously I have other goals. But yeah, it's the podcast. I encourage anybody to like start a podcast because it's so rewarding. It's hard work, and you're never really, unless you really make it, you're not probably never going to be a millionaire off of it. But
Yeah, it's very fun though.
all right. And yeah, I think I am. I said a minute ago, I respect your time. So I just I want to thank you once again for the Saturday night and adding some insight. I don't want to say that you're a strong, powerful female voice in the space because that I don't think that defines you, but there is a need and a big hole missing for women advocating in this space, and I think you do a great job of it. And that's like the thing that led me to watching your content and listening to your podcast. I mean, there's not too many people doing the podcast space or even really promoting it, and I know that the females that watch you that I know, they really look up to you, and they'll be excited to hear that I had you on and got to sit down and have this conversation with you. And I hope you come out and pace me a little bit when I come out there.
Yes, message me and we'll figure out like the details and stuff. I would love to come pace you for a couple miles.
All right, guys, that's going to lock up this episode. I appreciate you guys, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you so much.